Good morning. Great to be with you all this morning. So for a great event that we have anticipated, certainly for as long as I've been at the library, and I think for probably at least another half decade beyond that. So we are going to share with you more than we have with any other group so far. Details of the first phase of the campus renovation, in particular the Mid-Manhattan plans, which were formally approved yesterday by the trustees together with the budget. So we are off and running. So not to put too fine a point on it, we've had a few bumps along the road. Thank you for sticking with us through that. The result, I think, is actually a great outcome. So we tried some things. Some of them didn't work. Some of them didn't make people happy, but they also didn't work. And so we learned. We learned to go back to you and to your colleagues. We learned to go back to the public and the experts and to scour the world for the best team that we could find to figure out what a great central branch library in New York should look like. Because for all the amazing work of my colleagues, Carol and your colleagues at Mid-Manhattan, and as much as I've loved the Mid-Manhattan since I used it in high school, we know that we can do even better. That's because the building wasn't up to the standards of our amazing staff and our amazing collections and the needs and aspirations of New Yorkers. So an important part of that process was to scour the world for the best architectural partners, and we found those. Francine Hoyman of McConnell, so coming to us from Delft and Holland, and then closer at home, Elizabeth Lieber and her colleagues from Bayer Linder Bell. So we're going to hear from them, but we're going to start with Iris, who will start us off, and then we'll bring up the design team. We'll run you through it. We'll have a discussion, and we're just super excited to share this with you and to share this moment. So thank you for all of your great patience and your great work and your great anticipation. Iris.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for not stepping on any of my lines this morning.
Let me try again.
No. So if many of you remember, last November we introduced you to the design team, and they then kicked off their pre-schematic approach to this project, which really required them to do a lot of validation or exploration of the programmatic work that we had done with the Bright Spot report. Some of it they accepted, some of it they rejected, as you would expect from world-renowned architects. They're not going to just take what you give them. And then if you remember, we came back to you in March with some early ideas for both the Schwartzman building and MML. I just want to say that Bayer Linder Bell have spent the last 5 months scouring the two buildings. There was many times in the evening and at night. I was in the building, and you find teams of McConnell architects and Bayer Linder Bell architects. I think these firms are the now preeminent experts on these two buildings. And so for the last 5 months, they've really been focusing on these buildings and really figuring out what the best approach is and how this project, in terms of the design, can progress. So in today's presentation, you're going to see the schematic designs that were approved by the board last night. We have I guess, as in the past, what we have come to the conclusion is that the Mid-Manhattan design will go and the construction will begin before this building. And the answer is, well, why is that? And I just want to go through the time frame so you understand. So as we have said, Mid-Manhattan will be closing so that we can do the construction in the building in a timely fashion and an efficient fashion. Just think if you were renovating your house, you wouldn't want to be living in it while the renovation was going on. So to prepare for the close of MML and to bring swing space into this building, because we're not just going to stop the functions of MML because it's such an important library here in the city of New York. We are going to begin construction in this building in December. And some of you who work in this building have probably seen our construction manager all over the building and beginning to identify spaces that will be constructed. So the move out of MML will begin December of 2017. We anticipate that it will be a 2-year construction period. so that by December of 2019, although I'm hedging myself a little bit, maybe January of 2020, we will move into.
Whoa.
Gotta take a little bit of a hedge. We'll move into, officially move into, how's that? Officially move into MML. Let me just say that I know that, as Tony has said, there were some missteps here, some misstarts a few years ago. We are very fortunate that we have a great team working on this project. Both our consultants, and I have to give in particular a shout out to Jennifer Friedman and Risa Homan and their teams for really working full time on this project. They have done an excellent job. So I'm going to turn the program now over to Francine and Liz, and then afterwards myself and Tony and Christopher and Bill will be up here, and we will answer whatever questions that you have. If you don't have answers, we'll make them up. So, yeah, I'm going to turn this now over to Francine.
Let me find out. I take this as a mic. I would like to be closer to the screen and closer to you. Very happy to be here. Of course, you all know the building. But I also have to explain. A lot of people think it's building is just two facades, but it's not. It also has this little diagram, makes a complicated diagram. But this is 5th Avenue, 40th Street. This is 39th Street, and this is where the staff building is. The building has a kind of strange form. And there's a pocket park here. A lot of people are not aware of it because there's no windows. But imagine, what if you bring some windows in there? That they can use this space. And the way this very strange form of the building gives inspiration. So, and that's what we call, what I explained later, the long room, the idea of the long room. It's a long room, but it's from 1 to between 40th Street and 39th Street. It's just, how many feet wide? I'm not so 20 feet wide, like 7 meters, and it's almost 70 meters long. That's what we call the long room. And it's also important in the access, I'll explain. So create the long room to house the NML collection. Because what was the big issue? We promised, Tony promised, to bring all the books next what are now in the building. But we also want to create also some new program in the building. So then the whole building would be full of high shelving books from the windows. That's what we don't want. So we want to have another concept about the shelving, about the books. The long room. Another thing what we really want to do is maximize light and bring in more daylight in the building. And that's the opportunity to do that here in this corner around the pocket park. But here is not windows. We want to improve in circulation throughout the building. To be honest, not just the American way, by elevators. No, we also want to stimulate more the European way, or the more Dutch way, but you also use stairs. It's much more healthy. Then I also want to have these stairs, not just like egress stairs, but that you feel safe in these stairs. And you think, hey, I also wonder what's happening on the next floor. Then what we have been very much discussing with all of you with the NY now, how to make a kind of vertical arrangement, what's part of the logic of a circulating library. Because a circulating library is about lifelong learning. We want to stimulate that, hey, maybe you come in with your kids, or you come in to pick a book, but hey, this is also possible. Or hey, they come here to learn English, hey, they can also go to computer lessons. Okay, so this is this serendipity what we want to stimulate in this modern new library. And then part of this lifelong learning idea, and the journey of learning, we we wanted to put something on top of the building. We call it the penthouse. It's a multi-purpose program. I will show you later. It's very much if you want to have a flow, people go through all the floors, a vertical flow, not just by the elevators, but also by stairs. So that's the main concept, the design principles. You can see this works. This is a little bit about installation. Building used to be, also there were a lot of people are not aware of it, but the NML is almost from the same year as this building. It's the same period. So it's very nice that they belong together. But it was designed as a department store. Why should not look like a library? For instance, this is a library in Birmingham. We as Meccano did. We made works on that somewhere. So it should be somewhere kind of iconic space. It's a library. This is the library we did in the Netherlands, in Delft. With a long wall shelving. And then this was the idea. Have you ever been to Dublin? Do you know the long room of Dublin? Imagine a new reinterpretation of that long room for ML. This was the idea. And combining that with this thing, a very strange form of NML. I will show. And then you also have to see the section. This is a very important drawing. Imagine we are standing on 40th Street. So this is 5th Avenue here. And we make a cut. Here are the neighbors. For this side is the neighbors. I don't know, I think there are more. And this is top, this is the residential part, and underneath the residential part is the staff building. So what we did, let me guide you through the building. The main entrance will stay on 5th Avenue. We will redesign that entrance, but it will be that entrance. Then you come in a space, what's double height space with a mezzanine level in it. And it's more about grab and go, the halls will be here. The information desk is more at the end, because we first put in self-service desk, because the one life is that the attitude, you first solve it yourself, and if you cannot solve it yourself, then you go to the staff. And the staff is not a police agent who's sitting next to the door. It should be welcome. So here is that kind of connection. On the mezzanine level is also the non-prints we are showing. Then we created the lower ground floor, I call it, at the lower level, with 2 atriums to it, to get daylight in it, and also that you can see it from street level. An area for the children's, on this side, easy accessible also by strollers for the parents. And a teen area with its own small atrium void with a stair, so they can also access by themselves to the teen area, because we should not mix up the children with teenagers. We found that they have their own area. And in between is a multi-purpose room for storytelling, and other activities. What can be, depending on the time, can be used by the teenagers or by small children. Then I go up. Second, third, fourth floor. And here you should also see the section, what I call the long room. You can see this. The long room has a very important function of what we call the general collection floors. With reading and the study space are more orientated on this side. Here is most of the collection. I will show you an image of that later. What is so interesting of this zone of the long room is that in this zone is for book handling. Over here is a lot of logistics and information desk and the halls, because most of the books are always picked up on the street level. And on the top floors, I will explain later to you, this long room becomes little rooms, consultation rooms, because for talking and having meetings to them. So first then, the general collection, what's more the traditional circulating library, or I always say, reading spaces and study spaces. And we can still decide, is every floor the same or is it different? That there are areas that are more silent, or which areas are more co-work spaces. So we will define it Also, some of the books will be also on this part of the floor, but these shelves will not be high, they will be just this high, because it's very important that you feel safe in the library, and it has a lot to do with visibility and sightlines. I will show you an image of it. And there's a void, so it connects these 3 floors of the library. In a way, it's a little bit a cake of layers with different libraries on top of each other. Then we go to the 5th and the 6th floor. They are linked by a void themselves. Connecting these 2 floors. This is the learning center for adults. Here are these activities as classrooms for English as your second language. And next to it are classrooms for to learn computer skills. And next to it is then more the computer labs. Kind of innovative projects. It's over here. Then next to that is the job center. And that's connected to also with the void and the stair, and you can walk there, to the business library. And where you learn people to set up your own business, to write your CV, to have all these consultation rooms. The consultation rooms are over these 2 floors, so they can be used by the learning center, but they can also be used by the business library. And on top, the business library, and as you know, also Sybil has now also kind of auditorium-like space for events. That's happening on top of the roof, but that space is for everybody. I was going to tell someone, I told them it's 100 activities we are bringing up. That's happening on top of the building. Have you ever been on top of the building? You should go. Organize an excursion and take a picture of all of you standing on top of the roof. I cannot say this. Really nice. But it's because it's quite amazing there. That roof is now just used for installations. A lot of noise. What if we make it a multi-purpose room on top of it? And it has it will be flat. It will not be like this. And this is a ramp. It's huge.
Great.
And created, and it will be flat, and one space for about 160 people, another room for about 100 people. We're dreaming of it to also connect it to a bigger space. There will be a small cafe upstairs that you can have can be used by staff, can be used by all New Yorkers, can be used as part of the idea of the purpose rooms. There's a terrace around it, what will be public, and there's even kind of hidden garden and secret garden as part of it next to our neighbors. It's happening here. What you can also see is that we did make it higher, a little bit higher when I'm standing here now, because there is parapet around the building, and we want people being in that space that you can also see that you feel more connected to the city. That's not too hidden. That even if you're standing there, that you can see Schwarzman building. And on top of it, you will always have the installation. We designed it like I said, a kind of chapeau, a hat, even a wizard's hat, I call it sometimes. As part, and also why we do it, I will show you on the last picture. It's also a little bit of tradition in this area of Midtown. Yeah, I did explain everything, I think. Yes, next. The idea of the long room. So you see, this is 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. The long room has 5 floors, and they're not that high. Of course, it's also a little bit talking to this building. But these stacks, first of all, they're public. They're not structural. So if you at a certain moment, maybe in 10, 20, or 50 years' time, you don't have so many books anymore, nobody knows, and maybe you'll even have more books. You can take them away, you can make these little co-work spaces of it. That's kind of flexibility. And it gives also a kind of nice atmosphere that this building is now a library, not a department store. It's connected by bridges. And also imagine I'm standing here now and the pocket park is behind me. So we have also windows here, some windows. And you're looking to 40th Street. Can you orientate yourself? Yeah. Another image. This one. Can you imagine to have lunch here? So here you see this idea that this is elevated, like this podium. This is the 160 room. We made the head like that it's protection from the rain and the sun, but there's also not too much air coming in, not too much sun. It also defines a little bit that if you have a conference here, that they have a little bit of own outdoor space around the, and we think that it will have sliding doors. But it also creates a nice edge to this area, that this is more public. You can informally sit here, you can look, there will be maybe glass railing, looking back and you can see Schwarzwald. Because we should never forget it's one campus. And as you can see, we also have been discussing a lot what should be lodged in this building, what should be lodged in that building. And represent both buildings will be great. We never want to hear the building on the other side of the street. It's one campus. Next. So this is how it looks now. And if you look very well, as I told you before, it's from the same period. And also these buildings. See what's happening here on the roof. What's happening here on the roof? What's happening there on the roof? That's why we made the wizard's head. It's a kind of modern interpretation, a classical interpretation, and making, and it's part of this new destination in the life. And it's also being connecting it much more with CESP. But maybe it's best to show you the movie. We made a movie for you. You're the first ones to see it. I say all kind of things. And we selected Bob Dylan here, and we were before we were visionary. So this is 5th Avenue. The point to the teenagers area with their own entrance, with their own staff, was from the inside. The existing entrance, what we will renovate, is a special door. The corner. We also want to show that it's a library, not a store. You're looking back from CESP back to Emma. Again, Fifth Avenue. Entry. Security over here. On the right hand side for the teenager area. Behind that is reading newspapers, self-service desks, waiting area, elevators. Everything is also ADU. At the end is the information desk. Now you go down. This is the children area. Left hand side is the teenager area. We try to put a lot of attention for acoustics. Different areas for different ages is the idea. Lost the stories. Second floor, third floor, fourth floor, the long room. With informal meeting spaces, all kind of different meeting spaces. Circulating collection is here. They have high shelving. The bridges connecting the different levels. The elevators that are here. Going up, third floor, fourth floor. Maybe fourth floor is more a quiet area, you have to find out together. We also want people to sit along the perimeter, along the windows, but also along the void. This is, I like a lot of things, it's a long table. We had to keep all the columns, so we integrated the columns with this long table. And it's also you know, that you sit together, but you also have a kind of private space. That's the idea of the round table. Maybe we also want to make higher tables, this height table and that height table. The adult learning center, we imagine that these are the two rooms for English as a second language. Maybe a little bit as a special wall, but there's windows in it. Then there are two classrooms for computer lessons. This is the information desk. And then you get the area once more, the high-tech computer tech lab. Here next to the void, very visible. And this void connects also to the business library. On the right-hand side, on what is the long room are the consultation rooms and workspaces. So now we go up, you can take the stairs. We go to the business library. The business library has partly reference books and partly circulating books. The idea is that this is making more circulating books. This is also more business like area. Information desk. And maybe the reference books are more over here. Screens, communicate. Very important also areas where you can sit along in the back to Fifth Avenue and 40th Street. Now we go to top floor, to the penthouse. Two large multi-purpose rooms. This is the one with 160 people. You can see how we look outside. It also has a special seating, that's the idea. So it's really, it doesn't feel like you can have 10 floors on top of you. It's the end of the building. The hat gives you also shadow and protection from the rain. You can open up these sliding doors. And this is more the public terrace. Secret garden next to the neighbors. And we have to keep the same height. This is a smaller multi-purpose room. It's for about 100 people. So you can also program the indoor and outdoor space. Everything is ADA accessible. We want flowers and gardens, top of it, stimulate the senses. Sliding doors, you can sit in calmly on the edges. Making the connection with the Schwarzen building. This is your new URL. Not finished yet. But it's not, it's now, I hope, now really a library.
Morning, everybody. So, it seems you're as excited as we are about that vision for MML. We're just thrilled about it, and we want to make sure that we're addressing the entire Midtown campus. So we're going to take a little bit of time to talk a little bit about our progress on this building, the Schwartzman building. I do want to go, there's a lot to talk about, but I do want to go at a fairly quick pace for two reasons. First of all, we're very much in the midst of thinking about this as a master plan. So the designs for it aren't as advanced as what you saw for MML. And the second thing is I really want to make sure that we have time to answer your questions about both buildings. So the SASB concept design, what we've been doing as a team is developing a concept design based on the programming that we've done and based on the Bright Spot program. And then we're also considering this, as I said, a master plan. There is a lot to do in this building, as I'm sure many of you know. And we had to think about this not as just a project like an MML where we do it, we design it, we get the documents, and we build it and we're done. But that this is a long span master plan that has to be carefully thought about. But no matter what, we have principles in our concept design for the building. The first one is that the master plan implements both program and infrastructure goals and phases. So there's a lot of exciting things that will happen in terms of bringing more public space into the building, more space for researchers, clarity for the tourists, but it's also about what happens behind the walls. There are a lot of aging systems in the building, which I'm sure many of you know. We want to balance both of those things. Restoring elements of the original Beaux-Arts design, you know, one of our goals here is to do no harm, basically, with this building. We care very, very much about it. It's an icon of our city and of our country. But there are elements of the original Beaux-Arts design that were clear when the building was built, but over time things have changed, and we want to make sure that we bring back that clarity about how daylight helps you to orient, about how the corridors help with very clear axes. Some of those things have gotten muddied over time, so we're thinking about how to clarify that. Making infrastructure improvements to facilitate movement and circulation of people and collections. We're looking very carefully about all the paths that bring books and items to people, that bring people to books and items, to bring you to your offices, to bring tourists up to see what they want to see. And we're thinking about the stairs and the elevators and the routes and figuring out a better way for that all to happen. And then to use the vertical arrangement of program to enhance the user experience. Just like in MML, our approach is to think about every floor and every half of every floor to think what makes sense in terms of stacking the program. So on the right here, we have what we call an exploded diagram of the building. So we have all the floors of the building stacked up. I'm not going to get into every detail about this, but in terms of nomenclature, I want you to understand when we're thinking about it, there is a lower level that we call the basement. Technically, it's a cellar, and I think some of you have been there, but probably not all of you. We have spent a lot of time in there, and we want to make that space better. It is actually an important floor, a back of house floor. We have the street level, which is the 42nd Street and 40th Street entrances. Then we have what we call the bel etage level. You go up the grand stairs, you come into the Astor Hall, that's the bel etage. There is a mezzanine on the south side that is not original to the building. The balcony level, second floor, and then the third floor, the corniche, the top floor. Originally a lot of daylit spaces up there. So when we think about this, we're thinking about how do all these floors make sense. So this is a section, just like Francine showed you the section for the Mid-Manhattan Library. This is a north-south section. I've cut through the building. 42nd Street entrance is here on the right, and then the loading dock would be to the left. And this conceptual section shows you how we're thinking about organizing the building based on what exists today. We're not taking everything out and putting it back in. We're building off of what's there today. So one thing to note is about vertical circulation, which is that you have north elevators in the building, 2 of them. And what we're proposing is that the south side needs elevators as well for the public and for staff. So there's going to be a new important south core on this side. So we have good circulation to the north and to the south, which augments actually the stairs that exist today, 3 sets of stairs, public stairs, and a 4th stair that we're going to put in as well. The other thing is about how you enter the building, because right now, from a public point of view, you enter the building both from 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. And what we're thinking is a clarity of who would enter in each of those locations. All of them are open, but we imagine that tourists, visitors will want to have the experience of going up 5th Avenue. That's not going to change. 42nd Street entrance, we know a lot of people who come out of the subway. Researchers who are in the know and know what to go that way go. But what we're showing is that the 42nd Street entrance becomes more of an entrance to a conference space. So Bartow's Forum is going to be supplemented by breakout rooms, conference rooms, event rooms, and it's going to make greater use of the ground floor, which I'll show you in a minute. 42nd Street entrance is different from the 40th Street entrance, and I do not mean the loading dock. We are talking about a new 40th Street entrance that has not existed today, what has historically been the back of the building. So it allows the loading dock to be the loading dock, much improved, but gives a separate entrance that we're considering an entrance into what we're calling the education center. So this is for families and for school groups, and also for the staff, so that the staff does not have to walk through the loading dock every day, importantly. Up above that, we always are focused on Astor Hall as a central space, Solomon Room up above it, sort of bringing the visitors up to Solomon Room, making that back into an exhibit space. And then the balance of the spaces in blue that we're showing are for the research and other public reading rooms. And it's really augmenting what you have today and really opening up more rooms to the public than there are today, because that has been our goal with the available space that we have. So how do we do all of this? Again, we're not going to get into too much detail today. I'm going to focus on phases 1 and 2, which is really in our near-term future. But what we've decided to do is we've put each of these things that have to happen in the building into work groups that make sense. And for us as architects and engineers, it makes sense to us so that it minimizes the impact on the operation of the building. We are never planning on closing this building to do construction. We always want it to be operational. So we have to think very carefully about how the construction that we do can minimize impact. We also do it based on what makes sense in terms of the infrastructure. We want to take care of things in the quadrants where they are. If we're going to provide additional air conditioning, we want to do it in a logical location. So we as architects and engineers thought of this in phases that both enhances the program, more public space, better space for staff, better space for researchers, doing that along the way in a series of phases. The fact is that these phases, we cannot say exactly how much time it's going to take. A lot of that is dependent on funding streams. A lot of it is dependent on programmatic priorities. We think of it in a way that if we create a priority, we can move it back and make phases work so that it is in alignment with how the money comes in, how the program priorities are. So the way that we show it today with phases, what we call 1A, 1B, and 1C, is the early work and the swing work that has to happen in this building to accommodate MML as it closes for construction, as well as some critical infrastructure work that we think should happen at that time as well. That we know. Phases 1A and 1B, no matter what, it's happening and it's actually starting in a few weeks. Phases 2A and 2B are about the education center and the conference center, which are generally on the ground floor, and we feel like that makes sense to do that. Once MML moves back into its new home, we're going to have the availability of all that space that we turn into MML swing. We don't want to turn that back into private space, we want to keep it public space. So to us, it makes sense to move forward with the conference center and the education center. After that, there are subsequent phases that are about making more public spaces on the upper floors, making more infrastructure improvements, possibly removing the mezzanine in the south side, bringing back the grandeur of some spaces, possibly rethinking the south court in terms of its great daylit staff space. Can we make more of it? Research and executive spaces, more spaces for consultation rooms, viewing rooms, seminar space, things that we're already thinking about today. And as well, Astor Hall, making sure that we make improvements so that when events and public programs happen there, that they happen in a smooth and efficient way. So all of that lines up to a whole lot of work that has to happen in this building, and that's why we consider it a master plan. This is already underway. I think of course you all know that the Milstein Research Stacks have opened, the Rose Room has opened in its grandeur. Fountains are completed. The fire alarm project in this building is underway. The information desks and security desks have been installed. So this is all also part of the master plan in a sense, is that you've already started doing work here. So onto the early work. What are we going to start doing in December, basically, to accommodate the MML swing space? We wanted to make sure we had principles for that design as well. The idea is to create a cohesive and welcoming temporary library for MML during construction. We really want the experience, the user experience, and the high level of service to remain as much as we possibly can in the swing library. We want to minimize disruption to other spaces, other functions in this building to make sure that these are operating as harmoniously as possible, and to consider future plans, our master plan, when we do the swing design. We don't want to invest money in doing a swing library and in those ground floor spaces and then just rip it out 2 years later. So everything that we do, we're thinking about how does this help us in the future. So the program. The idea really here, you'll see here it says maximize. What we were trying to do with the space that we had available in this building to create a swing library was to maximize the amount of seats, the amount of browsable volumes that people can access on a daily basis, with the remainder of the collections to be in the stacks. Maximize the program space, the amount of public computers, both computers and laptops, provide service points in all reading rooms, and to accommodate the MML staff and displaced SASB staff. A bit of this is like a game of dominoes, one thing has to fall for the other thing to happen. So we are making moves throughout the building to make sure that we can accommodate the swing space. So this is the ground floor plan. Over here on the right is 42nd Street. Here's the 42nd Street entrance, 5th Avenue, and 40th Street. And all the areas that are shown in color are areas that are affected by creating a swing space for the library. So the entrance to the swing library is going to be the 42nd Street entrance. And there are all these rooms along here that are generally underutilized space that were vacated and have been used in various ways over time since the 39th Street building was occupied. So what we're proposing, first and foremost actually, is some infrastructure work as we would consider it, enabling work in order to allow these spaces to happen. First of all, we're creating some back of house improvements behind Bartos Forum. This is to allow events to occur not in the corridor, the prep space that happens. So this is a good permanent solution. So, and that will also allow freer access to get to the stacks, because you're going to have access to the stacks from the staff needs access to the stacks to retrieve books during swing. We're also creating new bathrooms. That is a permanent improvement. The rest of the space, so the rest of the space is about creating everything in orange that you see are public and collection spaces. So there are 3 large spaces for the public and for the collections. All on here, and when you come in here, this is the main entrance. There's a service point here. This is the most public space for grab and go, for holds, and there will also be reading and collections here. We have retained a space here that's a classroom space for program space for public programs. Here we have more public and collection spaces. This light green is staff space. While there will be staff in other spaces in this building for MML, we wanted to make sure there was a staff presence down at this level as well. We've been working with Carol to determine what the best use of these spaces are in terms of disposition of staff. And then focusing on this room here is another service point, more reading spaces, and also computer spaces as well. The access to the stacks, you can see there are 2 ways to go through to the stacks. First, through the back of house space here to get to the stacks, and secondarily, there will still be an access point through the existing children's library, which of course remains there and open until we're ready to open the permanent home in MML. So some views, just showing some initial renderings of this. This is a view of room 76 here in the corner here. I've just walked into the swing library. There's a service point in the back. I should say that what we're doing here is a lot of cleaning up, basically. There's demolition of old finishes, furniture, partitions, things like that, but we're retaining anything that was original to the building. So there are good perimeter bookshelves. There's some millwork seating over by the windows, and making sure keeping the windows as open and as clear as possible to get as much daylight as possible. A view of room 73, so this is the public space right next to the main service point. Again, putting the tables next to daylight as much as possible, and putting the books away from daylight as much as possible. Some reading areas, doing improvements to make sure that there's good power and data in these locations as well. That is a good investment for the future too. And then finally here in room 60 in terms of a collection and reading room. So again, just making sure that we're putting as many tables and chairs as we can for people to come and sit and read, but balancing that with the amount of browsable volumes we can accommodate. So now stepping back, that's the swing space. That's the general disposition of the swing space that we are going to start doing construction on this starting very, very soon. Just giving you a flavor for some of the vision that we've put into the master plan for both the education center and the conference center. This is a historical picture from 1916. The plaza was always considered to wrap around both edges of the building here. As it is today, as you know, the current state is a little, let's just say, a little cluttered up, and always there was this mechanical penthouse on 40th Street. So it's that raised area that you walk past before you get into the loading dock. It's behind the wall. And this is the area where we're considering making the changes in order to create a new 40th Street entrance. So if you can look at it as it is today, and then the idea here is that we actually lower that mechanical penthouse, we extend the plaza further around the building, and we create a new 40th Street entrance, really continuation, a very sensitive continuation of the plaza around onto 40th Street. Here's another way of looking at it. I'm standing basically on a ladder. I was actually, somebody was. Looking back towards Fifth Avenue, here's this mechanical penthouse, and then just taking one of these windows and making it into an entrance from on 40th Street for staff, for the public, a plaza area, this very gathering area for school groups to muster before they go into the building. So we think that this is going to be a great, both a functional and programmatic improvement for the building. This is a picture historically from 1909 during the construction of the bindery space here in the southeast corner of the building. And these are such great photos in your own archives, which we've really relied on to get a sense of how the historical space was. And so the idea here is to take this whole lower quadrant here and to create it into a welcoming orientation and classroom space for school groups, for families, and for visitors. So this is how it looks today. Actually, not today. This was a few months ago, and we know a lot of good cleanup has been going on. So I know that there's less there now. And then eventually, the idea of turning this really into an orientation and a gathering space for school groups and for children. And always making sure that there's access to daylight, preserving whatever historical finishes we can, and making it a very welcoming space with very flexible classrooms that we're already starting to program. This is the current state of the children's library, so I'm now focusing up here. All this in red is what we're considering space in support of what we're calling a conference and event center. The fact that Bartos Forum is at the heart of that, will remain at the heart of it, but really improving these spaces here in order to create a more full-fledged conference and event space. So one of those spaces is the current children's library shown here. And the idea is to really sort of renovate it, take it back to what it used to be a little bit more in terms of the bookshelves, the millwork, putting in sympathetic lighting, great and good AV technology to make this a very flexible space that can be during the day for public programs, for screenings, and then even at night to turn it into a space for events as well. So it has flexibility for both public programs and events at day and at night. So this is just one example of the many spaces that would support Bartos Forum as part of a conference center. So that's a flavor of both the master plan and the vision for SASB, and I think we're going to turn it over to all of you to ask your questions. Christopher's going to come up.
Bill and Iris and others are coming up. So we can field questions. You guys have seen this. I've heard a lot of oohs and ahs happening behind me. So I know that you guys have reactions.
Yeah.
Who's got the first question? The back.
I'm Kathleen Thomas, I'm from Phil, and I can say that in all honesty. I did have a question, really, Francine, to you. I'm sorry I forgot your last name.
Ooh, but
I'm sorry. They were beautiful areas. What you didn't address a little bit for us today was the staff areas.
oh, sorry.
I got around to it. And also, in that general subject of staff areas, I think there might be some concerns, at least I heard some there, about where staff restrooms might be, and also where one might park bike.
Yeah, for the group that's streaming, the question was on staff areas and staff facilities.
Can I explain it now? Sorry, I forgot to explain it, but they're also part of most of the staff is part of the long room. There are more at the end, so the long room with the shelving is more whereas the public area. But what goes more to the pocket part with new windows and facing also 39th Street will be staff area. So they have almost like a little skyscraper on top of each other. It's all the staff area. But what we also do is, of course, it's very good desk area on every floor, always close to the elevators with a view also to the restrooms and to the stairs. But we also create on every floor a kind of touch-down area spaces also for staff. So it's, but we will explain later with you also more in December and January. We will have more detailed one-to-one or not one-to-one groups programming meetings together. About the restrooms, we created now enough space that we can solve the restrooms, but we also will continue the whole discussion about restrooms because public buildings and restrooms is always a big challenge. And then we will also discuss, will there be certain areas where it's just for staff restrooms, or do we do restrooms on every floor for the public or not? We have enough space to keep that discussion running the next month. So we will solve it together with you.
Next question.
Can you elaborate on the loading dock? We move millions of dollars of artwork in, and we have to fight caterers moving chairs all the time. I can't keep doing this. It's extremely stressful when the weather is bad, the artwork is out on the street, and the chairs are in the building. And it's extremely aggravating.
You're talking about this building?
Yes, our collection is getting second priority to the caterers.
We will, but that also we will explain later, but we have been enormous amounts of energy taken to make the flow of special collection, less special collection, but still special collection, because it's two flows of collection, staff, researchers, we all want to make it clear and that they don't cross each other anymore. And what's made it most important, why we put around marchers for most of the conference area, that it's not happening through the whole building anymore. So there's a very strong logistic that goes directly to marchers, and special collection will have its own flow, or even its own entrance to
It's
that.
not the same loading dock.
No. So let's be clear. We're actually doubling the loading dock.
Thank you.
So instead of just one way in, the loading dock that should exist next to it, that wall will come down so trucks can back in both ways, and there's a direct entrance that will double your access. Exactly for that reason.
I take it personally.
We all do.
Yes, you and Sal both clap.
I just want to also, that woman asked a question about bicycle racks. Liz and I were just talking, the building code now requires you to put bike racks in buildings, and so we will figure out where it will go at MML. That's the code.
A quick question, just to follow up, it sounds like a great plan for Saturday logistics, because that's my whole plan. How about in Manhattan? Because that seems challenging for us. Is there any way to do that? The logistics loading without in Manhattan?
What's happening in for ML, it will be the same entrance where it is now, the loading, so that's on 39th Street. And then we make it, then we have enough space, because it's not allowed to really make a loading dock. I heard even in New York, you cannot even have a reserved area on the street for that. And then it goes immediately down. Then there's a whole book handling and logistic handling in the lower level. There's enough space to that. Then there is a special elevator that goes up in the long room. And you can also access one of the elevators dedicated for that in the normal area. So we try to put a lot of attention to all the logistics, because we know how important it is.
Next question.
My name is Malcolm Sybil. The swing library, it sounds like a new concept. I'm not really understanding what it is. Someone,
Sure, I can start with that if Iris wants to comment. It's not uncommon when you close a public library to open a temporary space as much as possible within that same neighborhood to keep delivering the services and programs that you offer. So you don't alienate and drive users to other solutions and then not get them back when we reopen it to you. So what the Swing Library does is allows us to move most of what happens in the Mid-Manhattan Library today into this building and then leverage some of our other Midtown locations. So Civil, the Grand Central Library, 53rd Street will also bolster those collections and programs as well during that period so that as much as possible, we're still delivering good quality library service to users who rely on Mid-Manhattan, and then they will be as excited to go back into the renovated building as possible. Iris, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I want to say is that the work that will be done in the swing space, it's not swing work, it's permanent work. So we don't have to go back in and redo a lot of the base building work when we create the educational center on the ground floor. So we're not going to be spending double the amount of money, we'll just spend it the one time.
So then once Manhattan opens back up, then what would that space be? Will it still be the same swing library?
No,
No, and you kind of saw a hint of that in Liz's presentation where we're looking out at what maybe a conference center and an education center using that space with some of that advanced work that's already been done. Another question?
I have a question kind of follows on what the analysis from the great presentation, thank you. Number one, do we know what the seating capacity is for the rooms that are going to be on the first floor? And the second part of that is what's from the hours we are looking at when we report in the swing space? So we have really extended hours, so it's going to be possibly the same as last year, or we have to
So the hours will be impacted. We're finalizing those now, looking at both the hours and the staffing and the cost to change those hours. But again, when I referenced using other Midtown locations such as 53rd Street, Grand Central, and Civil, we're looking at those places as well to again mitigate, people who might use that building at 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night might have other options to use. Liz, do you have the seats?
Yeah, it's kind of out now, it's until we finalize with Carol exactly the layout of what collections will go where. It's going to be about 150 to 170 seats, will be not including the program space, will be on the ground floor as part of the public areas of the Swing Library. But don't forget two things. First of all, the picture collection is also moving over. It's going to be in room 100 and it is going to have a generous amount of seating. And also, that spaces in this building were also, brought open for the public to use when Rosemary Reading Room was closed. Not all of those are going to revert back to being private spaces. So we are being attuned to the fact that in this building, the majority of it will be on the ground floor. We'll have some on other floors. But also, as Christopher said, this is a satellite of spaces. And so we assume that some people will also use other libraries.
And it's a small part of the question. So our corner room, which is on the first floor, is kind of a landing space for folks to write a big coffee and have coffee, come up there for coffee. What would that look like in this space? Do we have that type of setup for our regulars that are
So they'll have to go up a few more steps, right? Because they'll be coming in the 42nd Street entrance and they'll turn a corner and go into the circulating library. But as Liz mentioned in the presentation, that very first corner room there on that level is intended to be that grab and go. Here's the new books. Here's quick seating before I go off to work, and then the same during the lunch hour and on the evening rush.
This is during the swing space.
Yeah. Yeah, in this corner room in this building. So we're swapping one corner for another corner. Any other questions or reactions? Is this inspiring? Both these spaces, are these inspiring? Do you think your colleagues and patrons will be inspired by these spaces? Yeah. Awesome.
I enjoy everyone. Focus on natural life.
I do too, having spent many quality years of my life in the lower ground floor of Manhattan. Natural light. Anybody else want to make a comment? All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Tony. share the joke with the rest of you.
Just thinking about the years to get to this moment. Just thinking about it, all of us together. So let me make a few, just a few pointers that I hope are the obvious takeaways here. The most obvious is a process that has been trying to engage with the staff as well as the public, and that's not going to stop, right? So the refinements continue. We are totally committed to that. The results so far in the Mid-Manhattan, taking a lower level that has never been used for the public and giving teens and kids separately their own space. A welcoming entrance filled with light and life from Fifth Avenue. Mezzanine where people could work on a computer bar overlooking or grab their DVDs. 3 stories of Mid-Manhattan library in the way that we have all known it, but in a completely different way. Instead of books up against the light, people in the light. And this, I think, brilliant architectural move of taking this 20-foot wide, sort of seemingly wasted, unusable space, using that to solve the book storage problem in both a concentrated way, but in a monumentally inspiring way, with this atrium in front of it and a wall of books, allowing us to have more seating than we've ever had in the Mid-Manhattan, and also giving us possibilities for improved staff space. That's a 3-story atrium-connected Mid-Manhattan, on top of which is a 2-story atrium-connected that both provides particularly adults with the skills that they're going to need, and then a way to find jobs or start businesses based on the great work, building on the great work, continuing the great work of Civil, and all of you involved in that. And then, to top it off, 250 people space for great program. And I think the only public roof terrace possibly in the city of New York, overlooking this beautiful building. So we took an incredible workhorse of the Mid-Manhattan and have turned it into the greatest central branch library that New York has never had. It's time for us to have it. It's time for you to have it. And then connecting that to this building, the most obvious connections being the flow of programs, events across the street, no longer as a barrier, but actually as a campus. A new entrance that makes that clear, right on the kitty corner to the Mid-Manhattan. Inviting the public, students, in to see our treasures, safely preserved but beautifully exhibited. An education center to teach the next generation what a research library can do for them. More research space. And a building, this building, that is beautiful, but is sort of a logistical nightmare. And making it work. So we aren't bumping into each other, we aren't bumping into the, the great collections, into the chairs, and the caterers not knowing, having to work in the halls, and all of that. All that changes. The frustrating elevator. So those are the sort of, if you will, prosaic moves. The Mid-Manhattan, we're 3 years away. This building's going to take a little more time to fully see it through because we can't close it. We won't close it, right? We can close Mid-Manhattan only because we have this swing space set of options to use other spaces temporarily. We can't do that here. We won't. So we still have some decisions to make at the board level, again, with your input about what to do with this building, in what order, how fast, how to find those resources, so we will. So this is really an exciting moment. It's an exciting moment for the future of the library. I know that you've been patient. I know that there will be some bumps ahead, and we're gonna have to work together to say, okay, this part of the plan, we need to think some more about it. Maybe we need more bathrooms here, or, are we sure that all the staff are well located throughout all these complicated rooms? We're gonna have to do that together, but we're committed to that. And to continuing to serve the public. The basic notion, though, let's be clear, is the greatest publicly used research library in the world must continue and be enhanced. We need a great circulating library and a great civil going forward. We know that those have distinct audiences and needs, and we need to address those distinctions. But we also know in the 21st century there are ways in which they can support each other. And we need the buildings to help make both the distinct aspects and the collaborative aspects work together. And all of it is for one very straightforward purpose. It's the same purpose we've had for a century, and it's the purpose which, dare I say, maybe even just in the last week, we're reminded of how central it is even more. We have to do everything to make sure that all New Yorkers and all comers to New York have the access to all the information, the great expertise of our staff, the great collections to which we need to keep adding, so that everyone can be informed, skilled, learning, and creative. So that we can build a civil society in this city and show the world and America what that needs to look like. We're going to need that even more. And this project couldn't be more inspiring, and couldn't be better timed to make very clear our commitment and our investment in that future. So thank you to you all. Thank you to this amazing team, Kristen and Carol and Jennifer and Risa and everybody for getting us to this moment. It's going to be amazing. Thank you all so much.